We're going to get right to Afghanistan this morning, where the Taliban is now officially in control. Armed extremists took over the president's palace after he fled the country. And now there's a massive effort to evacuate Americans living there as thousands race to the airport, desperate to get out. ABC News has also learned that President Biden will address the nation this afternoon as the situation in Afghanistan deteriorates. Biden is set to speak around 3:45 p.m. Eastern, and we will bring that to you live when it happens. But right now, we want to go to ABC News senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell in Kabul, Afghanistan, tracking the latest for us. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Diane. There are two Kabuls today. There's one where life is kind of returning to some semblance of normality, but it's a new Afghanistan. It's Afghanistan under the Taliban. Their fighters are on street corners. We've seen them patrolling around the cities, heavily armed, their white flag flying. We've seen them in Humvees with Kalashnikovs, guarding the entrances to buildings, key junctures, roadblocks around the city. What I also noticed driving around the city is we didn't see one single woman out of their home. Effectively, half of the population is now behind closed doors, afraid to go out because of what Taliban rule is going to mean, despite what the Taliban leadership has said that they will assure and guarantee women's rights. The women of Afghanistan just don't believe that. Certainly for now, there is that climate of fear here. The other Afghanistan is one that we've seen down at the airport. Just tragic, heartbreaking scenes of chaos. People who fear for their lives, that if they're caught by the Taliban, they will be killed. And we've seen the Taliban do this in other parts of the country, desperate to get to the airport. Now, despite the deployment of thousands of troops, not just from the United States, but from other NATO countries, they seem unable to secure the perimeter, to have an orderly exit of staff, diplomatic staff, but also foreigners who've worked for NATO countries who they promised visas, promised an exit strategy. We've seen them rush onto the runway. We've seen them trying to cling onto airplanes, running in front of airplanes as they're taxiing, trying to get off the runway. That's what it means for a lot of these people left behind. So there's a lot of fear, a lot of chaos, and a lot of doubt. We're waiting for the senior Taliban leadership to probably make their way from Doha, Qatar, where they've been based for years now, to Kabul, and then we'll see what statements are made, what kind of security guarantees, what kind of promises are really going to be made and honoured to the women of the country. I think to a certain extent, they were slightly caught out by the speed of their advance. They're now bringing in hundreds more fighters from other parts of the country to try and at least provide some semblance of security. But how this country has changed, how this city has changed in just the space of 24, 48 hours, it's hard to describe. And for the majority of Afghans, the future, for the moment, looks very, very bleak. Diane?
All right, ABC News senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell in Kabul, Afghanistan. Thanks, Ian. And let's go to ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez for more on this. Louis, U.S. troops at the Kabul airport have actually returned fire in at least two incidents that we know of so far. What can you tell us about the security situation there?
The security situation, Diane, at the airport is pretty dire. You've seen the videos of the crush of Afghan civilians who have arrived there in the tarmac, headed over to the civilian part of the airport. We are aware of these reports, and so are military officials. They cannot provide us many details as to what exactly happened, whether there was an exchange of fire or not. ABC's Martha Raddatz is reporting that there was some kind of a situation there where some armed men approached, and in self-defense, those U.S. military personnel responded, but we're not sure exactly whether these were people who were approaching with bad intent or if this was just a miscommunication. But obviously a very tense situation there, as you have almost 2,000 soldiers at the airbase at the airport in Kabul trying to maintain security as these flights try to get out.
So the Taliban says that everything is peaceful and that that's their goal here. Are they allowing civilians to go to the airport and leave?
That's another issue that's unclear. We had some early indications that from the Taliban that they wanted to restore order in the city. Now, does that mean that they're going to allow foreigners who have been living in Kabul to head to the airport? It seems like that is going to be the case. We're getting some conflicting information as to whether that will apply to Afghans, particularly these Afghan civilians who worked for the United States as interpreters or providing support over the last 2 decades. We know that there are tens of thousands of them who have applied for these visas. The United States has said in statements as recently as last night that they intend to get them out, but it remains unclear whether the Taliban, whether they will allow that to take place, because they control the city, as you heard from Ian. That means they control the roadways. If they control the approach to the airport and don't allow Afghans to cross, that could be a very serious situation.
Now, some are calling this whole thing an intelligence failure, but officials tell ABC News that key intelligence assessments did consistently predict that the Taliban could overwhelm the country within just weeks, but that policymakers didn't listen. Who is to blame here?
There is no doubt that you are hearing universally here in Washington that this was a major intelligence failure on the part of the United States. What we're talking about is that there were assessments made by the U.S. By the Department of National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence, that estimated maybe 6 months to a year for the Afghan government to be able to hold out if things remain the same, where you had a strong Afghan military that was continued receiving some support from the U.S., and that you had an Afghan government. Obviously, that collapsed instantly over the last week. But we are reporting that there were some even additional intelligence that indicated that the timetables were much, much sooner than that, that indicated that with, yes, some more dire predictions that within weeks the Afghan government could collapse. Now, let's remember, this was a decision that President Biden made back in April, and this decision was supposed to have a withdrawal carry all the way through September, but the U.S. military, they exited early. They ramped up very quickly for their own security purposes, and for all intents and purposes, this withdrawal was completed in mid-July. Maybe that helps spur things along. Maybe that is one reason why the intelligence assessments were so off.
So the UN Security Council is holding an emergency meeting on Afghanistan this morning. What can we expect to come out of that?
Well, we're going to see some, obviously, some concerns about the situation there inside of Afghanistan. There's always discussion when the UN Security Council gets together about presenting a united front in terms of, like, let's get the restoration of order, let's maintain continuity of government, and let's maintain human rights. Those are all uncertain questions right now. All that's for certain is that the Taliban is now in control of Kabul and in control of Afghanistan. We know already that two members from the permanent members of the UN Security Council, Russia and China, have issued statements. China has said that they respect the will of the Afghan people, almost a very good reach-out offer to the Taliban. We know that Russia is playing more of a wait-and-see role. And we know what the United States is saying. The United States is telling the Taliban, don't mess with the U.S. operation to get out Afghan civilians and Americans from inside Kabul. And we know that General McKenzie, the head of U.S. Central Command, made that warning in person to Taliban leaders yesterday in Qatar.
All right, Louis Martinez at the Pentagon. We appreciate the update, Louis. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.